It's Friday, April 3rd, 2020. I'm David Menzies, and I'm accompanied with Sheila Gunn-Reid, and this is Battleground. And we're filling in, of course, for the big boss man who is busy writing a future bestseller. And I'm not kidding about that, folks. And I should say that right now, Premier Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, will be announcing how bad the COVID-19 projections are. And we've been tipped off by the Premier himself yesterday. These are going to be really, really harsh numbers. So as Mr. Producer monitors the electric radio, we have anything newsworthy to come in. This is where you want to be for your breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, because as they say, when news breaks, Sheila Gunn-Reid tapes it back together. She's good with her hands.
Oh, David, it's good to spend this next hour with you. And for everybody at home who don't know what we're doing here today, and I'm not sure if David knows what he's doing here today, this is Ezra's weekly live chat show where everything is live, including all the viewers at home. And because we're live, I'm on via Skype, and I completely forgot to change the Disney Plus password. And so if my internet goes down, it's because my kids are upstairs on Disney Plus, and I forgot to change the password. So what you can do to keep us going here at the Rebel during this pandemic, we're all in the same boat together. Times are tough. We don't take a penny from Justin Trudeau. We can't hold anybody to account who's funding us, unlike the mainstream media leads everyone to believe. So if you want to chip in to support the Rebel, to keep the lights on, Ezra's made a commitment that he will do his very best to make sure that we don't face any sort of layoffs here, and that we are covering the news to the best of our ability while we're all sort of quarantined in our little hidey holes. You can donate in the super chat, so that YouTube will take a portion, we'll take a portion. It'll highlight your comment. David or I will read the comment, probably me, because David can't read. He's got aging eyeballs. And and it's just a good way to support us. Yes, get your glass. There you go. You're like Clark Kent.
Well, I don't want to brag, but...
And actually, you know what? We already have a super chat.
Wow.
So I think we should get right to that. We had a super chat from one of our very generous donors here before we were even on air. So before David or I could say anything stupid or ruin the mood, someone had already donated. So I think that's wonderful. I'll read it here. It's from Apu Baker Al Puff Daddy. What a great name. What a great name. For $100 Canadian.
Wow,
that's
thank you.
So generous. Says, good morning, and TGIF, David and Sheila, good to see you both. It is great to see everybody, or to imagine seeing all of you through my camera. Do any members of the media party and or Liberal NDP approach you off the record and give you their true feelings about how unqualified our current Prime Minister and his cabinet are? And what do they say? They don't approach me. When I am in places with them, for example, the Alberta budget lockup, they will take pictures of me and tweet pictures of me, but they will never actually walk up and talk to me. They treat me like I have the Rona. What about you, David?
Well, I can think of a couple, and I don't want to give their names because I just don't want to make things miserable at their workplaces. But one sort of buys into the media party narrative that Justin Trudeau is the best thing since sliced bread with a slap of Nutella on it as well. The other is far more skeptical and is not a fan. And but basically, even with that particular individual's newspaper, you don't want to rock the boat too much that way, especially since they are now government funded, and one of the senior executives, when they scored that financing, put out that tweet where he said that all the reporters should run around the building doing fist pumps because they're getting all this Justin Trudeau Liberal money. It's so sad. It's heartbreaking, actually, Sheila. But and speaking of, here's the thing. You know that we're banned from, these Rideau Cottage pressers at 11 that Justin's been giving. And, the thing is that if we could get there, and this is what I'm begging one member of the media party to ask, and I know it will never be asked, but Sheila, I'm sure it's the same in your neck of the woods when you go into a town or city in Alberta. Certainly when I visited Niagara Falls, which gets 30 million tourist visits a year and is now a ghost town. When I go downtown Toronto and Yonge Street is like a set piece from The Walking Dead, I border on tears thinking of all the business people that are never coming back from this. Never. That, especially in the food service sector, there's going to be such carnage there. It wouldn't surprise me if 1/3 of restaurants that were open last month never come back. I think that's what the survey results are indicating. And my question to Justin Trudeau would be this. Seeing that we now know that China is completely responsible for this carnage, for a dollar devastation in multiple trillions with a T, the world over, that people are having their lives ruined by this. Do you still stand from that statement of 5 or 6 years ago when you said that China is the kind of basic dictatorship that he admires? First of all, Sheila, what do you think the odds are that that question will be asked? And if it were asked, what do you think Justin Trudeau's answer to that would be?
It'll never be asked, never, because anybody who asks a hard question, that's a quick way to get yourself kicked out of those Rideau Cottage, those press conferences where our hermit prime minister runs his fingers through his hair, throws on a jacket, and shuffles out the door in his pajamas. I mean, it is just, when you see how hard President Trump is working in the United States. I mean, he's older than Justin Trudeau. I suspect the man is working night and day. And he stands up there every single day and takes an hour's worth of hostile questions from people who seem to be cheering for the coronavirus because it would mean that Donald Trump would fail.
I know. It's appalling.
It's just a strange dichotomy between the two media parties in our respective countries.
And you know what, Sheila, on that point, what I find perversely amusing, as you said, Donald Trump, man into his 70s, I don't know where he gets his energy from. He is absolutely a dynamo. But I think it was our boss, Ezra Levent, in one of those morning meetings that mentioned the irony that there's so many people right now that are stir crazy that if they had one wish, it would be for this coronavirus to go away and they could get back to work, get out of the house, get back into the gym, do what they love doing, get into the arena with their kids, you name it. They want this to end. They want to get back to work. And yet Justin Trudeau, this is like a dream come true for him. It's like hooky day every day. Granted, he doesn't get to go to the Caribbean or out to BC to do surfing, but he's just like, taking it easy. He's in his PJs on the couch watching videos. And I ask people, do you think this is the measure of a leader, that this is the kind of person you want running the country right now?
Yeah, this is so perfect for Justin Trudeau because it gives him the opportunity to do his two favorite things. He's the vacationer in chief, and he likes to throw money at problems as opposed to actually dealing with the problems. As an Albertan, I'm used to when the country's in trouble, if we're working, we can work hard enough to carry everybody. And that's not what it's like right now. And it's really frustrating and frankly heartbreaking for a lot of Albertans because we want to help. We see that Newfoundland is so close to insolvency, it's crazy. We know that Ontario is going to need our help in the coming years to recover from what's happening because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We want to be able to help, but because of what's happened in the last 5 years, largely due to Justin Trudeau and Rachel Notley denying us market access so that we could combat what Russia and Saudi Arabia are doing by dumping oil into the market and driving down our prices, we're not able to help. And that's truly frustrating and sad for a lot of us. I was reading a Blacklock story this morning. You mentioned food service. 800,000 people were like nuked out of their jobs in food service. Like, I think it was two-thirds of the entire food service employees in the entire country are basically either unemployed or facing immediate unemployment. And people will say stuff like, well, I don't eat out, so it doesn't really affect me. I don't really care about if the restaurants die up. Well, if you pay taxes on your house, you damn well better should care, because you're going to see, like, especially restaurant business, they pay for tomorrow's bills with today's money. And that's just how it is, right down to their taxes. That's how it is. It's just not a business with high margins. And so if all of a sudden your municipality has all these empty commercial real estate places, like so many vacancies, but they still need to pick up the garbage and pave the roads and do the water, guess what? When there are no business taxes, they come for you as a residential homeowner and they raise your taxes. So the money's going to come from somewhere, even if you don't eat out, even if you don't care about the restaurant business. They matter. All these little small businesses matter. And if they're not there to pay their taxes, well, the municipality, they're not really going to cut back. They're just going to come reach into your pocket. And that, I think, is the real crisis we're going to see like 18 months from now, when all these businesses haven't survived. They're going to go for homeowners. And I think everybody is in for a real catastrophe, even if you are still working.
I think you're right about that, Sheila. And you know, I'm the kind of guy that, you know, when I drive by a business, even one I've never patronized before, and I see it boarded up, you know, and closed, I feel profound sadness. I think you have to be heartless. Even if the business had the business model wrong, and even if it maybe deserved to go out of business, the bottom line is, if it's a small, independent, family-run operation, that was somebody's dream, right? To service the public, to eke out a little extra for themselves, you know, get a part of the Canadian dream. And when I see it boarded up, it pains me. And I think, like I said, you've got to be absolutely without a heart to say, oh, well, this doesn't affect me, so what should I care? And the second thing is, Sheila, when in another life, I used to cover the food service and the hospitality business for a trade journal. And I can tell you, after 7 years of covering that industry, what I learned was never to get into that industry and to admire anybody that can be a success in that industry. I think the numbers were, in the first 3 years, 80% of new startup restaurants fail. That is an atrocious number. And if you can get past the 5-year mark, that's basically, you know, the sort of, you're out of the minefield by then. But to get past 3 to 5 years is a Herculean task. That's when it was the best of times in a booming economy. Right now, oh my goodness, that business model is right out the window. But you know what? We can't depend on the Prime Minister, the part-time drama teacher, for inspiration. But thank goodness we've got Patricia Hadju as the Minister of Health, the former graphic designer. And I don't mean to mock anyone who's in graphic design, but I don't know how this qualifies her to be the Minister of Health. And I think we might have a clip of her waxing poetically about a certain nation, Sheila?
Yes.
My colleague mentioned was that we don't rely on any one country's source of data. In fact, it's the World Health Organization that coordinates the data from all countries. Dr. Tam is a special advisor to the committee that's been working on the pandemic since the very early days. Dr. Bruce Elward led the World Health Organization committee to China to do the investigation of what was happening, what they could determine on the ground in terms of China's capacity to have a full understanding of what was happening. There's no indication that the data that came out of China in terms of their infection rate and their death rate was falsified in any way. In fact, if you look at the death rate overall in China, it's much higher than the one we're seeing now. And so we rely on the World Health Organization to do this important work because, of course, we're all in this together. And I think one of the most important things to understand about this pandemic, this global pandemic, is that as long as coronavirus exists in one country, it exists in all of our countries, that we actually have to work collectively as a world now to defeat this virus, to find better ways to treat and then eventually prevent this virus through vaccination or other kinds of methods. And that's going to take everybody working together. And
sorry, please let her finish. No.
China has shown that they've
Ian.
how
so I would say that your question is feeding into the conspiracy theories that many people have been perpetuating on the internet. And it's important to remember that there is no way to beat a global pandemic if we're actually not willing to work together as a globe. We will have to come up with a global solution to this virus. No country is an island. And I am so proud of the Canadian researchers that are part of the World Health Organization Solidarity Project that are working on developing vaccines and treatments for this virus that undoubtedly are going to be a big part of the solution about how we all get ourselves out of this situation.
You know, for starters, Sheila, let's begin with the little things. When she says no country is an island, well, there's Australia. That's actually a whole continent is an island. But you know what? She just can't stop lying. I mean, we're supposed to admire the World Health Organization, which is a puppet of China, where this crap began. And this is the woman, by the way, who said a week ago that asymptomatic passengers coming into Canadian airports were going to be given face masks that I suggest, Sheila, don't exist because Justin Trudeau gave away the whole kit and caboodle to China in February, even though this nation holds 2 Canadians hostage. They've been held hostage in inhumane conditions for more than a year now. And I've reached out to Patricia Hadju's office to say, did you misspeak or is there an error here? And I have heard nothing. That's been more than a week since I sent that email. And you know, Sheila, from my visits at the airport, with the exception of one person who I also think is not telling the truth, nobody is being given a face mask. In fact, I went out to Canadian Border Service Agency and I said, let me take a photograph of your stockpile of these face masks. That's not violating anyone's privacy. That's a bunch of inanimate objects, and they won't let me do it. So what does that tell you, Sheila?
Patty Hajdu? I don't even know how to say her name, and I'm not inclined.
It doesn't matter how you say her name, as the Rock
I'm
would
not
say.
inclined to learn. I don't think she deserves the respect of me learning her name. You want to talk about perpetuating conspiracy theories? This is the lady who told us that we don't need to wear masks, even though it worked in Taiwan, a country so close to the epicenter and so economically tied to China. They still managed to basically mitigate the spread of their disease and keep their economy and their schools open while protecting their sick, their elderly, their infirm by wearing masks. She told us we don't need to do that. Why? Probably covering for her boss. She's the lady who also told us that it's completely a bad idea, would never work to stop travel. And then literally like 72 hours later, we're going to stop travel. You know, when she goes on and prattles on about how this disease is in Canada and it's in all countries and we need to deal with it now, that's because you left the borders open, lady.
Yeah.
When Trump was canceling flights from China in January, I mean, I'm not quite sure about today, but just
they're
about
still open,
today,
Sheila.
there are flights coming from China constantly, and you've seen the level of screening that's happening at Canada's major airports. I'd probably say Pearson's probably Canada's most important airport, and we're not even dealing with that there. This is the health minister who oversaw changes to the Quarantine Act that allow for migrants with visible symptoms of the coronavirus to still saunter across the border and claim asylum because they're protected persons. I mean, this lady, it's outrageous. She's unqualified. You know what? I don't have a problem with people coming from different fields and being smart enough to learn their job and having applicable skills. But I've never seen pandemic Patty's work before this, but she's just not able to, she's not learning on the job. I don't think a pandemic is a time to learn on the job. And the only thing she seems good at is regurgitating World Health Organization talking points and being fiercely loyal to the Liberal Party line. I just pulled up this report from Bloomberg on my computer, and it came out before Patty had her little talk. It came out actually April 1st, 2020 at 9:15 in the morning. And it says, China concealed the extent of the coronavirus outbreak in its country, underreporting both cases and deaths it's suffering from the disease. This is not a conspiracy theory. The U.S. intelligence community concluded this in a classified report to the White House, according to 3 U.S. officials.
But know, Sheila, you forgot to add one thing about Minister Hajdu in her protection of the Canadian public. When you do fly into one of our international airports, whether you're coming from Islamabad or Beijing, you're going to be given one of these, a pamphlet. Thank God Canada is a nation of trees, because we can run these things off until the end of time. And maybe that was her role as a graphic designer. Look at the use of green and blue. It's kind of got a Vancouver Canucks jersey vibe to it, wouldn't you say? And by the way, that's a horrible jersey and a horrible logo, but that's besides the point. Maybe that was her as a graphic designer using her expertise. It was the design of these pamphlets in 9 languages. Unbelievable.
Thinking a pamphlet is somehow like a vaccination against the coronavirus is the same as thinking a restraining order is going to keep your stalker from killing you. It actually does nothing.
Yes.
And most people don't read them. How many times are you handed a pamphlet in a mall or in a street? Actually, I don't go to the mall or the street, but I've seen pictures of people getting pamphlets, just random stuff. And you just toss it in the garbage, like 5 feet down the first garbage can. You just toss it out. Actually, you know where I did see that happening? There were a lot of pamphlets in the garbage at the UN climate change conference. There was a lot of wasted paper there. It was kind of fun.
The blue book, surely.
Yeah, we have a ton of super chats we have to get through. So I am okay. We've got one from Howard Tenenbaum. Gives us $10. No super chat that he'd like us to read, but just a fantastically generous donation. Thank you, Howard. We've got one from Paul Schofield for $5. Good job, guys, from North Carolina. Thank you. We've got Cindy McSeven, $20 Canadian. Gosh, Cindy, that's very generous. Says, keep up the great work, Rebel. I only give what I can afford. Thank you so much. We appreciate every little bit.
That's all we can ask for. Thank you.
Not happy with the U.S. and 3M right now. Wow, it comes across as cruel. How many wars were we dragged through due to the deep state? I see Trump, though, has threatened 3M, who I think were sending masks to China. That they have to keep their masks domestically. So,
Sheila, don't we have a 3M plant in London, Ontario? I mean, so is Trump talking about that plant as well, or is it just the domestic U.S. 3M plants that he's targeting?
I think it's just the domestic U.S. plants that he could use under the, I think it's the Defense Procurement Act. I might be saying that wrong, but I think it's only domestic plants. I don't know if he can compel American companies that are working internationally to produce things internationally and send them to the United States. But wouldn't that be something if he could? And why aren't we pressuring our manufacturers the way Trump is? Like, Trump is strong-arming and threatening to name names of companies who are not going to cooperate with manufacturing goods that Americans need right now. Where's Justin Trudeau in his, his morning Justin Trudeau show? He's not mentioning any of that. When you see Trump's press conferences, he's got the leaders of the business community standing up there, and he just introduces them, and they say what they're doing.
Exactly.
And I think, though, it takes a special kind of president that is, first and foremost, a germaphobe, which I understand President Trump is, to lead people through a pandemic. But also, he's a builder. So you see him building hospitals and using the might of the American military to build hospitals. But also, he's a businessman. So he knows that the solution to this lies within American business and American manufacturing. And unlike Canada, I think at the end of all of this, we're going to see a renaissance in American manufacturing as it comes back on shore to North America. We're not going to see that.
And you know something, Sheila? I think the definition of a germaphobe in this day and age of the coronavirus is someone who was ahead of the curve, because we're all germaphobes now with this 2-meter social distancing. And I think with Justin Trudeau, as long as his subscription to cottage life isn't interrupted, I think he is just fine where he is. And by the way, I think a leader that's been doing a great job, we mentioned him right off the top, is Premier Doug Ford. And right now, as we speak, he is presumably giving out the data of how bad this curve is going to spike in Ontario. And you know, Sheila, here's the difference between Ford and Trudeau. Trudeau yesterday was peppered with questions. Why can't we see the numbers? Why can't we see the numbers? And basically, Justin Trudeau was like, well, the secrecy is for your own good. I'm of the point of view, Sheila, that, you know what, Justin, there are actually adults in the room. We want to know how bad it is. And for those who are the apologists of the you're going to cause fear and panic argument, you know what? Maybe a little fear and panic is needed for those Lugans that are, say, going to a beach, you know, in throngs of 100 or so, and still pretending that this is business as usual, because it's not. And so I'm really interesting to see, A, what Doug Ford has to say, and B, I'd like to reach out to our viewers and say, where do you stand on this? Do you think this information should be hidden from the Canadian public, or do you want to see what the real deal is?
You know, I firmly believe in access to information. The more the Canadian public knows what the government's doing, the more we have the ability to hold them to account and question them on their decisions. But seriously, are we really concerned about panic right now and hoarding? I mean, the health minister told us to run out and hoard toilet paper and medicine a month ago. They're worried about it now. I think Justin Trudeau doesn't want to release these numbers because he doesn't want it to hang like a millstone around his neck. If the numbers are catastrophic, the way I think the modeling might show that they are, Justin Trudeau is going to have to answer for giving away those masks, for not closing the border, for continuing to allow flights in. If it is as deadly as the models are predicting for Canada, then he's got a hell of a lot to answer for. And that's why he doesn't want to release the models. Whereas Doug Ford, who's delivering masks with his own truck and apologizing for being too busy to answer his personal phone. I saw that article and I was like, it's a pandemic. Of course, he's not answering his personal phone. You know, he's out there every single day. Jason Kenney, same thing, giving us the full details as much as they can and telling us why things are changing day by day. For us, on the Friday, they were going to keep schools open. By Sunday, they were closing schools. And they told us, okay, well, these are the circumstances that changed. So this is why we're making this decision. We're not seeing that out of the federal government at all.
And that's why, Sheila, I'm calling BS on Minister Hadju for her saying that people, whether it's symptomatic or asymptomatic, are being handed out masks. Because I'm kind of like Clara Peller, the old Wendy's spokeswoman. Where's the beef? Where's the mask? Prime Minister Trudeau gave away so many. And we did that story 2 weeks ago, I don't know if you saw it, where I interviewed an individual real estate agent in Markham, Peter Ding, who has a contact in China that can manufacture as many as 1 million masks per day. And that stock is ready to be deployed. He has been going to Procurement Canada to get an answer like, do you want this? And he's being constantly deferred to a website that basically doesn't work. It doesn't even accept PDFs, so he can't even show the certificate of approvals. And when he phones them, his calls go unreturned. My call to Procurement Canada, their media relations office, it also went unreturned. I guess they have better things to do. So, there is, and by the way, I should say my wife is in the safety supply business, She cannot find any stock anywhere for any price. So this business that, they've got this stockpile and they're handing out, I don't believe it. And secondly, when people like Peter Ding come up to the government with a solution, they're ignored. This is shameful, and this is playing with people's lives at the end of the day, Sheila, because an average hospital goes through more than 5,000 of these masks per day. And there's nothing to replenish them. You've got to beg, borrow, and steal. It is egregious off the scales, if you ask me.
Well, yeah, and with Mr. Ding, I mean, he was only answering a call that the government put out. Like, the government actually asked for these things. And he's like, okay, yeah, I got that. Let me help you. And then there's so much bureaucrat-ease in the middle that he can't help. He wants to help. He's a great Canadian. He just can't. We have to get through these super chats here.
Oh, okay.
We've got one from Benzine for 65. I'm not sure what that is because the way it was sent to me, I don't know if that's something either Asian or a pound. I'm not sure. 65 from Benzine. Thank you very much. No super chat. One from Proud Boys Calgary, my friend Justin gives us $6.99 Canadian, said the media party's prophet emerges from his cave every day to address and enlighten his loving disciples. His words must be true and never questioned. Yeah, sometimes it feels like these people are one pair of weird pajamas and a comet away from a mass suicide. Like they're just very they're very like they're towing the line. The dear leader's speaking. He's going to tell us all the good things we want to hear, and then he just like goes back. And it's very much like a cult for sure. We've got one from Matt Dugas. Very generous, Matt. $69.99 Canadian.
Thank you.
Tedros, maybe you mean Trudeau, seems to be an interesting individual. Justin in the office, broadcast professional Justin, has given me a note that says, be careful with this name, and then 2 exclamation points, so I know he's deadly serious. He's serious as a heart attack right now. He says, the name is Clitorius. Thank you for the warning, Justin. No, thank you.
Oh, thank God you had that one to read, Sheila.
5 pounds. Great work, Sheila and David. Have you given Ezra the day off? Ezra doesn't sleep. The only time he takes away from working is to eat and tell jokes and send me Russian pop songs. And he's busy working on the next bestseller. We've got one from Howard Tenenbaum again. Howard, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Tam says that masks aren't helpful for the public and might even increase the risk, ostensibly due to touching contaminated outside of the mask. What about touching unmasked faces, not contaminated? Yeah, I watched that Dr. Tam press conference, I think that you're referring to, where she said that, like the public doesn't need to wear masks, but it doesn't really do any good for the uninfected or asymptomatic, which I thought was strange because asymptomatic people can still spread the disease. So yes. I think there would probably be a benefit to having their faces covered so that they don't aspirate all their cooties to the rest of us. No offense, but like if you have a disease, I don't want it. But also, if they serve to protect uninfected healthcare workers from catching the disease from infected people, why does having that job mean that it works for them? Like, for example, maybe I'm grocery shopping, but there's an infected person at the grocery store who doesn't know it. Why wouldn't the mask protect me in the same way that it would protect a healthcare worker? Just because they're working in a hospital doesn't change the fact that the disease is caught in a certain way. Yeah. It's so outrageous. And I think it's just to cover for the fact that there aren't enough masks, clearly.
But Sheila, I'll tell you, and I can, understand the confusion by our viewers and everybody else regarding these masks. I think in the last several weeks I've read about 7 different articles about these masks, and you know what, Sheila? I got 7 different answers in these articles, supposedly either written by experts or quoting experts in terms of the effectiveness of these masks. And you've even seen some officials flip-flop, on a day-to-day basis. Yes, wear a mask. No, you don't really need a mask. Well, maybe you should have a mask. It's incredibly confusing. So if there's anyone out there who is a medical doctor, a scientist, an engineer in this field, please educate us whether or not we A, should be wearing a mask, and B, what kind of mask we should be wearing. Oh, and by the way, tell us how to wear the mask. I see all these comments when I'm out of the airport saying, Manzoid isn't wearing that bloody mask correctly. Yes.
David, they want you to be safe. They don't want you to get sick. They want you out there doing the job. You don't be offended that these people care so deeply about you. Here's the thing for me. With masks, there are some people who are saying they're not effective. And there are plenty of, I think, evidence to say that they are effective. Taiwan.
Yes.
However, there is 0 studies telling me that they are harmful. And I think that's the important thing. If wearing a mask isn't harmful, then why stop me from wearing one?
I have to tell you, I hate wearing that mask. I find it hard to breathe. And all those snarky comments about me needing more cardio, it's not because of that, folks. Yeah, it's been a long winter, and I'll be on the bicycle this weekend practicing my social distancing, of course, for the rest of the world. But I find those masks claustrophobic and even hard to breathe. But, good for you if you can spend 8 hours a day wearing a mask. But I think I just saw an image from our trained broadcast professional, Justin. Yeah, there I am. And I don't know if we have any, do we have any footage to run with that, Mr. Producer, or? Okay.
Menzies for Rebel News here at Toronto's Pearson International Airport. Well, folks, if you've been tuning into Rebel News lately, you've noticed that I've been coming here almost every day, just trying to find out if indeed any enhanced screening measures have been implemented to deal with the coronavirus and to basically prove or disprove that what our authorities are telling us, what our politicians are telling us, is true. And if you've tuned into any of those reports, you have noticed I've received a mixed bag that many of the things we've been told are being done are not being done, or certainly are not being done on a consistent basis. Now, as part of my missions here, I've reached out to Canadian Border Service agents just to get their side of the story, find out what's happening on the front lines. And typically the response is to either run away or to say no comment or to direct me to the Media Communications Department of CBSA. So I did reach out to the CBSA Media Relations Department, and I made note of the fact that I've been trying to get the agent's perspective on the situation here at Pearson. And I got to tell you, I did get a response back from Miss Rebecca Purdy of CBSA, and it started out a little terse, to tell you the truth. She said, "Please note, you do not have permission to film on CBSA property, nor approach Border Services officers for interviews." I didn't know I needed permission. And by the way, what is CBSA property? It's an international airport. It's pretty dead right now, as you can no doubt understand, folks. But certainly I didn't venture into any offices of CBSA. There's one behind me. You can see the sign. And even though it doesn't say no admittance, I've been respectful enough not to go there. So maybe that's what she means. In any event, let's dissect some other elements of my Q&A with Ms. Purdy, and you tell me if this lives up to your sniff test. Okay, so one of my questions to Ms. Purdy is the fact, why is it that there doesn't seem to be any remote temperature devices being used when it comes to screening passengers? We have found 0% of the people we've interviewed saying they noticed that they were they had their temperature taken, or they saw anyone else having their temperature taken. And Ms. Purdy writes, the SARS outbreak in 2003 taught us that temperature checks at airports are not an effective measure to prevent the introduction of infectious disease across borders. Well, naturally, my follow-up question is, well, if that's the case, why is it that so many other countries, ranging from Pakistan to the epicenter, China, are screening people this way? And Ms. Purdy told me to, well, ask those other countries. I also asked Ms. Purdy the following question. What is the policy for anyone arriving in Canada right now who claims refugee status? And what is the policy if that person is showing symptoms of COVID-19? And Ms. Purdy's response was this, quote, for your question on asylum seekers, I can tell you that all individuals, regardless of how they arrive in Canada, are screened for COVID-19, end quote. Well, folks, I don't know if that's really a satisfactory answer to you. It's not to me. Yeah, sure, they might be screened or tested, but then what? Are they put on a plane back to where they came from? Or are they brought into one of Justin Trudeau's refugee hotels? I'm not given the full answer. So that makes me raise a Spockian eyebrow, to say the least. Now, another question to Ms. Purdy.
I have to tell you, Sheila, like I said earlier, wearing that mask is horrible. Yeah, you know, in a way, I feel like the Batman villain Bane. Remember from The Dark Knight Rises, where the CIA agent says to Bane, if I remove that mask, will it hurt? And he says, yes, for you. But anyways, what do you make of some of those answers, Sheila? The only thing missing was a nugget of diversity is our strength, I think.
Yeah, diversity is our strength, and welcome to a big welcome to Canada tweet welcoming the virus. Just come on in. I just want to go back a minute because I sort of. Not that I made an idiot of myself, but maybe a little bit. Matt Dugas gave us $69.99 Canadian, and he said Tedros seems to be an interesting individual. And I should have realized that he was talking about Tedros and Hamnon, I think is how you say his name. I've never actually been forced to say it out loud, so maybe that's why my brain didn't register that he was talking about the head of the World Health Organization. Yeah, he is an interesting individual, isn't he? He refused to call the pandemic a pandemic when the time was nigh to call it a pandemic. But that's what you get when you have a director of the World Health Organization who is actually not a medical doctor at all, but was, interestingly enough, a malaria researcher. So I don't understand why the World Health Organization is so resistant to using a perfectly safe malaria drug to treat some of the sufferers of COVID-19.
Well, Sheila, don't feel bad about mispronouncing his name, because he doesn't know how to pronounce the following word, Taiwan. So there you go, right? It does not exist. Tai what? Tai who? What dat? Right?
Sorry, I can't hear you. We have a bad connection. Hang up. That's what happened.
Oh yeah, that too. Right.
We've got. Sorry, I'm trying to get through these super chats because they're just starting to pile up because we have the most generous and kind viewers.
We do.
We really do. We got one from Patrick Copeland, $5, says, keep it up. We definitely will, especially when our viewers, like I said, are so kind and so generous and rooting for us to keep going. We've got one from Annalisa S for $2.79 Canadian. Keep up the great work. You know we will, especially David. He works so hard. He's at that airport every single day. You know, that's got to be rough on the nerves of your wife, especially when you're blowing kisses at me.
Don't mention that. The name we dare not say.
She's the saint. We've got one from Weffelhaus, $20 Canadian, no super chat, but thank you very much for the generous donation. We've got one from Zero Truck Math K, $2 Canadian. Met you twice, Menzoid. You're a great guy and hilarious. You didn't meet him for that long, did you? You apparently have a great impression of him. That changes the more you spend time with David.
Hey, wait a minute. The bloom isn't off this rose yet, Sheila. What are you trying to do?
David. We've got one from Mike DeWitt. Holy heck, Mike. Again, no super chat that I can read, but I'd love to read it because he gave us $100 Canadian.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. We've got one from Andreas VT, $5 Canadian. I'm relieved this is not the big one. I suppose that remains to be seen. We don't have. I haven't heard the data out from Doug Ford yet. So, and you know what? Some of the models are not accurate at all. I'll get to that in a second. There's a model from Oregon that predicted that they would have like 4 times as many infected as they do right now. And it's like it went that wrong in a week. And I have been watching Oregon just because the population is so similar to Alberta and it's sort of not very densely populated. I think they have about 4.5 million. That's kind of what we have. 2 big major cities, which aren't all that big when you think about it. And so I've been watching their modeling, and they said some of the modeling shows that like the difference between the social isolating, like keeping everybody out of the public versus keeping the sick, the infirm, and the immunocompromised at home and just letting everybody go back to work with some restrictions. It's the difference between 30 deaths and 40 deaths. So I've sort of been watching that.
Well, Sheila, speaking of numbers, Mr. Train Producer just put a bug in my ear. Doug Ford just announced the projected Ontario deaths by April 30th, 2020. We're looking at, is that over?
With no intervention, it's 6,000.
With no intervention, it is 6,000.
Current intervention is 1,600.
Current intervention is 1,600.
And full future intervention will be 200.
Full future intervention, 200. Wow, look at those curves. It reminds me of my grade point average as I proceeded through high school. Anyways, these are the numbers Justin Trudeau doesn't want us to know. And I want to thank the Premier for at least sharing this information, whether or not remember, these are just projections, folks. Let's hope they are wrong in terms of being on the high side. That would be good for everybody. But Sheila, what do you make of those figures?
It's hard because these are just models. And so I'm highly critical of climate models that all the experts tell me are going to materialize, and then they never do.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure the Premier is relying on his best researchers and best modelers and best, Doug Ford tends to surround himself with some very smart people.
It's true.
I would like to see what those models would have looked like if Justin Trudeau had intervened early in January the way President Trump did.
Or if China intervened right from the beginning and shut down that country and its air travel right from the beginning when they knew. Oh, and here, Mr. Producer has projected cases. Is that 300,000, Mr. Producer?
That's with no intervention.
With no intervention,
If we did nothing, so it's 300,000.
Yeah, if we do nothing, it's headed to 300,000.
Current intervention is 80,000.
80,000 with our current intervention.
Future intervention, 12,500.
And future intervention, 12,500. So I guess the question is, Sheila, when do voluntary mandates by various levels of government become involuntary, become mandatory? I know they hate to use the word martial law, but do you think this is where we're headed? That if, 3 people are walking cheek to jowl down the sidewalk, the paddy wagon shows up and you're under arrest? I don't know. What's going to happen?
Well, and I'd like to see how this current intervention, again, compares to case studies like Taiwan and Hong Kong.
Yep.
Just because we're intervening in this certain way to prevent these deaths doesn't mean that if we had intervened in a different way, that those numbers would still be the same. We have these case studies, successful case studies that we're really not looking to emulate. And I think that's kind of bizarre given the catastrophic economic fallout that we're going to see from all of this.
Now I have projected Ontario deaths over the course of the pandemic.
Oh, so this is projected Ontario deaths over the course of the pandemic that Mr. Producer just sent along, and it's,
That's without anything in
Yeah, without any intervention, 100,000, and then with 3,000 to 15,000 with public health measures put in place. I don't know if that means current public health measures, Sheila, or enhanced ones. So these are daunting figures. This is nothing to sneeze at, no pun intended. Now, I didn't see the press conference because always the devil is in the details, and we know when we look around the world that typically it is the elderly, it is people with immune issues, it is people that have had respiratory issues and diseases. And what I learned just yesterday, there was a report, and I was absolutely shocked by this. It was to explain why Italy spiked so highly, is that when the hospitals there were initially overwhelmed with coronavirus positive people, instead of doing what they should have done, which would be to build a field hospital in the hospital's parking lot, they actually sent those people to nursing homes because the hospital was so full. And, Sheila, in hindsight, like I said, I can't think of a worse thing to do than to spread that pandemic. And maybe that explains why Italy went off the charts so quickly in terms of the number of cases.
That and Italy seemed to listen to the World Health Organization when the World Health Organization was saying in January that this is not spread person to person because China said so. They were out in public. They were posting pictures and videos of themselves out in public at the fountains, at, like at the Roman ruins, showing all the people who were out there defying the coronavirus. And, then they did the Hug a Chinese Day thing, which, Italy was a perfect storm. It's got an aging population to start with, and then they just blindly followed the World Health Organization instead of, doing practical things to sort of mitigate the spread of any disease, any infectious disease. If you were trying to fight it, you wouldn't have done the things that Italy was doing. In Alberta, most of our outbreaks and almost all of our deaths are from assisted care facilities. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking, but really that's who's dying from this disease. We have to get through these super chats. They're piling up.
And then we'll end it on a light note.
Yes, please. Trump train 2025 bucks Canadian. Stay safe, Canada. Yeah, we're trying. We've got one from Zero Truck Math. $2 Canadian. A lot of made in China masks are contaminated. They're trying to contaminate them. I think Ezra showed that video yesterday of the Chinese mask, the guy who worked in the Chinese mask plant who was taking the masks and then rubbing them across his shoe. We've got one from, Heather Skinner, $2 Canadian. Everyone is so generous today. Love you, rebels. The feeling's mutual. We've got one from Abu Bakr, Al Puff Daddy, $100 Canadian. Sheila and David.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. How have you and your family been coping with the COVID lockdown? What movies have you watched? What board games have you played? What activities have you done? We fans really appreciate your hard work and dedication during this crisis. You know what? I've watched all of Tiger King. And
I've heard so much about that. Is it worth tuning in?
Yeah.
Okay.
They've left some things out. I want to tell you a little something about my fascination with Joe Exotic. Joe Exotic has been on my radar since he first ran for president, I think in 2015. At one point, I had a Google alert set for him. So I'd wake up every morning and I'd be like, what's Joe Exotic doing? What's he up to in Oklahoma? I had watched his entire YouTube channel, which was amazing. At one point, I was waiting for new stuff to come out every time. And the world is just now finding out how interesting and crazy Joe Exotic is. And David, I cannot recommend it enough. However, the Netflix documentary leaves out some of the crazier stuff that I can update you on if you're curious. For example, he doesn't.
Let me watch the doc first. As for
Okay.
us at Casa Menzoid, one of the most recent movies we watched, and it's a movie that's actually, it came out in 1995, I believe. And guess what? It's an end of the world movie because of a virus, and it's called 12 Monkeys. If you haven't seen this movie, it is an absolutely beautiful movie. It made me realize how great an actor Bruce Willis is, not for the macho man action hero kind of stuff, but in portraying a human being, a tormented individual at the end of the world. I highly recommend this movie if you haven't already seen it, folks. And by the way, speaking of end of the world, you mentioned the phrase, oh, more super chats. Well,
Yeah.
how dare I ramble on? Let's get to the money,
No.
man. Right? Go ahead, Sheila.
I'm also teaching my daughters how to sew that we're all locked down because they're going to need to know. The kids who can make the clothes are going to be kings and queens
Yes.
in the end of the world. We've got one from Heather Skinner, $5 Canadian. Our temperature wasn't checked in YVR coming home from, I think that's London Heathrow. Although a passenger on our Air Canada flight was deplaned in London just before takeoff because she was coughing.
Oh, boy.
No masks. And I think that is it.
And so, Sheila, we've only got a few minutes left, and I thought that we could end on this note. You mentioned the words, one of the super chatters said, I wonder if this is the big one. And one thing the coronavirus has done, it's separated the wheat from the chaff in terms of what we should be concerned about and what we shouldn't, like such as those best before the those aged hippies that are part of Extinction Rebellion and Greta Thunberg. Suddenly they've all shut the hell up, thankfully, because this is what a real crisis looks like. And I tried to celebrate what I think might be the last Earth Hour ever, because it's becoming so much more irrelevant with every passing year. And certainly in the height of a pandemic, it is grotesque that we're, following Earth Hour. I mean, the very idea, Sheila, people have been cooped up in their houses for weeks, and these nut bars at the World Wildlife Federation go, yeah, now turn the power off and put some candles on to enhance that prison experience you're going through. No thanks. So last Saturday, I went, I tried to celebrate Earth Hour by going into the woods with a candle to do candlelit yoga. That's what the city of Vaughan, Ontario was recommending we do. And Mr. Producer is going to play an excerpt right now.
Let's see what fun I have. Okay, folks, here I am at the forest. I think it's actually called the Oak Ridges Moraine. A lot of people think it's serene and beautiful. I think it looks like a good place to put a condo development. In any event, I'm going to go into the woods, turn off the illumination that's coming from my V8 powered truck, and try to see how much fun I get by laying down on a blankie and lighting up a candle and celebrating whatever remains of Earth Hour. Oh my goodness gracious, folks, let me tell you, I am deep into the woods, far from civilization, and you wouldn't even be seeing this image of me if it wasn't for my trusty flashlight, which, of course, by the rules of Earth Hour, I've got to extinguish so I can light up my candle. But I'm telling you, this is like something out of the Blair Witch Project. It's so dark. I'm all alone. It's like when I lost my virginity. Anyway, let's light up the candle. Okay, folks, I hope you can see me. The candle's lit, and it's very quiet in here. But as long as I have this candle lit, I can see, well, a few inches in front of me, and it'll keep me warm, I hope.
on that video, Sheila. I was scared out of my wits there, right? But anyways, the moral of the story here is that when you turn off clean burn electricity, which is what we have in Ontario, powering our light bulbs, and you light up a candle, typically the candle you're lighting up is paraffin, which is made out of petroleum byproducts. So you're actually increasing your carbon footprint. Way to go, you geniuses at the WWF. That's, by the way, the place that spawned puppet master Gerald Butts. So that's all you need to know. And I think we're almost out of time, but you've got some more super chats there, Sheila.
We've got some more super chats. Also, by the way, fossil fuels are powering the ventilators to keep people alive right now. So if you want to get rid of fossil fuels, I guess you have to get rid of life-saving technology. We should touch on, because I think it was in the tweet for this, that Jonathan YANIV has been suspended from Twitter. So, I mean, there are some bright spots in this dark time, and that's one of them. So that's very exciting.
Just the name makes me laugh.
Oh, I know. I know.
Freak. Okay.
What, the freak show. Anyway. We've got one from Mary Gallagher, $20.99 Canadian, says, you guys keep up the great work. We definitely will.
Thank you.
Where would we be without the Rebel and Mad Max PPC? For majority now, just need the army of William Wallace. We've got one from my friend Justin from Proud Boys Calgary. Extinction Rebellion won't shut up. Now they say COVID-19 is the cure for humanity. Yeah, I saw that the other day. They said something about having to get off fossil fuels and, I don't know. Yeah, of all the people who aren't practicing hand washing, I guarantee you it's them. Anyway, well, I think we're over time, David. Again, this is the fastest hour I have on the job at the company. It's hard to believe this is my job right now.
I can't believe the hour is over, Sheila. And, what a week. So I guess we'll just end it here, folks. I think you've probably had a stressful week as well, but all I can say is try to look on the lighter side. Don't get stressed out by things that you can't control. That's like a failed exercise, like Earth Hour, for example. So just, if you have a family, hug your family, go out and enjoy the outdoors with the appropriate social distancing, and we will get past this. The only question is when. But hopefully it's sooner rather than later. So Sheila, to you and yours, have a wonderful weekend, and to all our wonderful viewers. And thank you so much, all you people that gave those super chats. We don't get any government funding, nor would we take it if offered, like our media party competitors. So we really do depend on your donations. And I want to thank you, because this is really a terrible time to ask for money, but we must to keep bringing you the other side of the story. So for Sheila Gunn-Reid, I'm David Menzies, and we're signing off from Rebel News World Command, somewhere deep in a bunker in North Toronto. Have a wonderful weekend and stay safe, everybody.